thank you for joining us for our Facebook event today. At the head of the table we have Dr. Cari Casteel, who joined our department as a clinical professor. And around the table we have various members of our grad student population. So, starting at this end,
I'm Katie Smizer.
My name is Taylor McPherson.
I'm Ashley Morin. I'm Emily Seeger.
I'm Eric Deutsch.
I'm Dan Moore.
and of course you all know me. So today's event is very special that all the grad students have prepared or coming up with questions to ask Dr. Casteel, both about her time in graduate school, the job market. So I'll open it up from there.
Oh, I can go first. Sure. So, being a grad student, I've kind of found that routine is really important for my writing and reading. I kind of have a difficult time dividing up my work during the week without a routine. So I was curious how routine factored into your completion of your dissertation and applying for jobs simultaneously.
I got really fantastic advice from one of my professors who said, pick one day every week that is your applying for jobs day. Because if you're doing it more than one day a week, then it's a time suck, right? And so Monday, for instance, Monday would be like the day that you check for new jobs, make a list of what you're going to apply for, email people for letters, everything related to jobs you do in that day, and then you don't go back and like look at that stuff for the rest of the week, because once you've looked at it, then you're thinking about it. And so I took that to heart, and it really worked for me because it kept me from every day going and checking the job boards and then taking away from my like writing, and because I need to like do one thing at a time. And so that worked for me. It may not work, for everyone, but for me it was, let me take one day that's all I do, make my list, do my emails, and then I'm moving on from there, and then I write or do sort of whatever related to TA work that I have to do.
I'm curious, during the interview process, what sort of question do you recommend as essentials to ask yourself to your potential employer?
Right. That's actually a really good question, because one of the things that I guess I am learning now that I get to see the other side of job hunts is, this is a really important question, because it's the way that I think universities sort of decide, engage your interest. So instead of asking you like, why do you want to come to work at University of Buffalo, they're like, do you have any questions? And so this is where you want to ask like a question sort of about the program to show you've kind of done some research. You might ask about like a connected department or an affiliation, or I saw you have a strength in this field. Can you tell me more about it? And then you want to ask something maybe sort of more community related. I ask in my interview, how much does it snow here? And they promised me not much. I reminded them I was from the South, and not much was none. But you want to ask something, like that. But you also want to show that you have done a little bit of work in sort of looking at the department itself.
I have a question, but it's not maybe a traditional question. Honestly, how many times did you want to quit during the process, and what pushed you through?
In grad school?
Oh yeah.
I don't know that there's a number. I didn't like write a list of it. It wasn't that I wanted to quit, but there were a lot of times where I thought, I don't think I can do this. I remember after I finished my exams, right, you're supposed to like start producing, and I'm writing a prospectus for my dissertation. I didn't know what that looked like. Even though you've looked at other people's, nobody's looks the same. And so I just was like sitting at my desk in my house like, how do you even write a dissertation? And it took a long time, for me to like start producing words. And then when you write a paragraph, and then you write 2 pages, then you've written write a chapter, but I still don't think I can do this. It really wasn't until I had written like over half of my dissertation that I started to think maybe I can write one. So you'll be surprised at what you can do, but don't feel like you're alone in feeling like you can't do it, because I think everyone feels like that, but we don't always say that we feel like we can't do it because you don't want to be the weak one. But I think all of us feel that way.
When you were on the job market, how important was it to publish? Because I know we're in a very publisher-perish profession, and was it super important to say, oh, I have a book deal already in the works, or was it, oh, I have an article and that was something?
So I did not get many callbacks or second, like, ask for materials. Like, no one really cared about my application first until I was actually all the way finished. That actually, in my experience, seemed to be most important. The fact that you were all the way defended and definitely going to graduate. When you're at this point, there are a lot of schools, particularly with the market the way that it is, that don't want to just take like risks that you promise you're about to finish and then you don't. And so I had much more luck after my defense, and anything that I applied for after my defense, I got a lot more options, and nothing changed in qualifications in that period of time, just that I could say I have defended and am graduating. And so both of the positions I've gotten after I finished were things I applied for after I was completely finished. So I think that first is important, and really it depends on what the job is. For me, like this job I have here is a practical job. Like my job is to teach. And so it was more important for this job that I be good at that, and not as important that I have like I'm ready to publish a book. So it depends on the job, and I recommend that you look for jobs that are for what you want to do, right? There are a lot of jobs now that are jobs like I have that are like teaching jobs where 0% of my job is my own research. I'm not getting paid to do research. I'm getting paid to teach. And so for the jobs that are more research oriented, I guess, then that's where you're going to want to find some way to say that you've been publicly engaged. Especially now, it doesn't have to be a peer-reviewed article, I don't think. I think you can do other sorts of work. Like I've done podcasts and blogs that I think today hold maybe not just as much weight as an article, but they show that you're engaged and part of the conversation. So there's a lot of different ways, I think. Still get a job without stressing about publishing.
You mentioned podcasts and blogs. Do you think that kind of in academia, people are becoming more kind of open to those forms in kind of an increasingly digital world?
So I think so. I think if you would have asked me this like when I started graduate school, I would have been of the mind that a lot of people are, that like you don't want to go on a podcast and talk about your research because that's not peer reviewed, and also like that's not a scholarly thing to do. Like you should write a journal article and publish it. But I think now there's so many great like public engagement that historians are doing that I think it's just as important for you to take your work out of like the journals and the books and go out and talk to other people. I mean, my topic particularly sort of works well in audiences of people. Like people love to hear about deodorant. Who does not? So it depends on your work, but I am a big fan. Like I make my students podcast style interview each other in the writing class so that they can practice not just writing about history but vocalizing it too, because I think those are two important skills.
Katie's question, you talked about self-doubt, or at least the implication of self-doubt. But I guess in the other aspect of that, how do you combat other people's doubts, including maybe your family or students who see a young professor and may not take you as a professional or your qualifications seriously?
Yeah, I, particularly because I'm so tall and I look old, right? I do get a lot of, especially when I first started, I was actually more anxious about the students respecting me than I really maybe needed to be in some cases. And I always dressed like really fancy and business-like when I taught, because I thought that is a way to make sure that the students know that I'm the professor and not a student in the class. But it wasn't me. Like, that's not my personality. I don't like dress up, and like I felt uncomfortable and I couldn't move around and engage in the classroom the way I did. So my advice is the best way to not be anxious in the classroom, to not be anxious in your job, in graduate school, is to not like try to be an imaginary image of what a graduate student is, and just be like whatever you are. I wear jeans and a lot of times flip-flops, even if it's buffalo. And that makes me feel like I'm more of an authority because I'm comfortable. And I think when I am comfortable, then I radiate more like authority. Like, I'm better at being an authority because I'm not like I'm not dressed like Eric, which would be uncomfortable to me, right? Like, and I would be sitting here talking to you guys and you'd be like, what is wrong with you? But I mean, for me, it just was to find a way to find my voice and to find a way like where I could be myself, but also like feel like the students and also faculty didn't think, oh well, there's Carrie, she's a bum because she doesn't wear shoes, and so. But I think it's up to you. A lot of that stuff I have learned is sort of you're your biggest critic. You're the one that usually thinks that people don't respect you way more than what is really happening. We do that with our writing and in the classroom, both in our graduate classes and in if you're TA and you're teaching. We're the ones that doubt ourselves more than anybody else. So you just have to be like, I'm the smartest person in the room, and go with it. Just own it. Fake it till you make it.
Speaking of faculty, do you have any strategies for how to connect with a faculty that you mainly know through a job talk? You have no connection with them other than when you've read about them or seen through talks per se?
And so, do you mean particularly like faculty in another university, faculty you're working with here, maybe like a brand new faculty member in the department? I'm just hypothetical.
I like that last option, but what I was going more for is if you have a job talk with the university within the department you'd be working, sort of those first few days, how do you connect with them versus just being a new official person?
So in my experience, and now I mean my experience is not like a wide swath of universities, but in my experience, if you're like the only new person and you've been through the interview process and you've sort of seen that many of the faculty seem to like be sort of friendly, most of the time they'll come to you. But if you feel like they're not, then it's not because they don't want to, it's just because like we get in our like once the semester starts, like I'm known to do that, and I'm just like, this is my to-do list, I have to do this, and if I don't write on my to-do list to go talk to someone, then I won't do it. And so don't take it personally if people don't reach out. Just say, I'm going to put this on my to-do list. I'll go swing by and see who's in their office and just say, hi, how's your semester going? I just wanted to formally introduce myself, or, so it's not, like I said, sometimes as historians, we work very solitary, right? We don't like, we don't all together write a dissertation at one time. We do it very, very solitary. And so if you don't either force yourself to engage or remind yourself to, then sometimes you just don't.
I know we've talked a lot about like kind of self-doubts and times where you want to quit. But on the flip side of that, what's been your most maybe like rewarding part of either grad school, entering the job market, or
A lot. But I mean, like definitely graduating, like the moment, like when you're finished and, you know, your parents are there, it's exciting, right? You're like, after, you know, being in school for 20-something years, I'm finally done being a student. I mean, that's really rewarding. What I actually really like is is what I've done in the classroom is hearing from students, you know, a semester or two after class who say, oh, like something that we learned in class, like we were talking about, and I was so excited because I got to say, you know, it's when you hear from students that like they've learned something and that they learned something that turned out to be useful, or that you have students who go on and get fellowships, like, and you wrote them a letter, you know. So those are the things that are most rewarding. It's like the fruits of what you do, like the students that hopefully I have like encouraged to learn more about history, even if it's not their major.
Were there any self-care methods you found particularly useful during those long moments of solitude?
So I have a couple of things that I do, and I've done ever since in graduate school. One day a week, usually the weekend. I am not an academic. I won't answer any emails related to school or my job or my dissertation. I will turn that off, and I will do whatever else I want to do that is not that. And sometimes for me, that was like just go outside, right? Like go outside and walk around, breathe air, see sun when sun happens. Right. So those, and just to have a day where like I was not constantly thinking about that monkey over here that's like, you should be writing, you should be writing, you should be writing, you should be reading, you should be... Because I started at the very beginning of school, like I've been able to sort of like, this is the day, and I still do it now, like this is the day that you're not going to hear from me. If you do hear from me, it'll be like 11 o'clock that night, like at the end of the day when that day is officially over. And I think that was really helpful. I walked a lot. Walking is like my favorite form of like, when I was reading for exams, people must have thought me maybe a crazy person. There was a park near my apartment, and I would go to the park and walk on the walking trail, but I would be like talking about all the things I had read just out loud to myself, because sometimes you just need that.
yes.
But also you need to be outside and not like, you know, in the library reading a book. And so those things work really well for me. Making myself go out and hang out with people, even when you don't want to, is useful. Because especially when you're just writing a dissertation and you're not taking classes anymore, you may not miss the class part, but you do miss the coming up here and having people to chat with in those minutes before and after class. And so for me, it was like, I need to find a time where I make sure I have other graduate student human interaction so that we can commiserate together. And I created a writing group. We weren't a writing group, that's fake. I created a writing group where we met every week just to like talk about our week and to talk about how hard it is to do this. And it was really just sort of like a group therapy session that we did, right? No one, but I think it was really helpful just for us to be like to see other people who are trying to do this, and we all finished. So, yay. But I think those are really important. Finding a way to compartmentalize and like separate yourself, because this can be a 24/7 job if you let it be a 24/7 job.
Did you adjunct at all while you were writing?
So I didn't, while I was writing, I was blessed enough I got a dissertation writing fellowship, so I just got paid to do the last part of my dissertation. I did adjunct in between my master's and my PhD for the year before I taught at community college, and scraped by, tutored athletes. So I have done that, but I was really, and I'm not like, I was really lucky in that I didn't have to while I was writing. I don't know that I would have finished as soon as I did if I had to.
It's a bit of a broad question, but when you were applying for your PhD, what were the qualities that you were looking for in the program?
So I knew what I wanted to write about, right? And so I wanted to find a program that didn't just have like one person who does the closest thing to what I want to do. I wanted to find a program that had a specialty in one or two of the fields I wanted to do. So if I want to be a modern U.S. historian, they need to have more than one modern U.S. historian. If I want to be a historian of technology, they need to have some of those too. It'd be great if they were modern U.S. historians of technology, right? So first, that's how I narrowed down a list to an amount of places I could apply to and like have time to write good applications to. And then I think deciding, if you get the luxury of getting to decide, because you get more than one place that you can go to, and if you get that luxury, then that's where you have to start thinking really attentively about the people that you're going to be working with. You have to have someone who can work with you and who complements your personality and who can deal with your personality. I had to have someone who could deal with my personality. I can be abrasive sometimes. No, not in a bad way, right? Like I am, I know exactly what I want to do, and it's hard to tell me to do something in a different way than I want to do it, and so I needed an advisor who could just be like, so, but I think that's when you get to that step and you have the chance, I so recommend, we can't all afford to like go do a visit on site, but we have Skype and, talk on the phone, video talk to this person, because you can learn a lot more from perspective, like faculty, in a conversation than you can by an email, because sentiment does not really come through in email that well. And so I think the most important thing that you do when you decide where to go to graduate school is to decide who you are going to work with. I think that's the most important choice that you make, because that's going to be sort of like your biggest cheerleader, and you want one who's actually going to be a good cheerleader. So.
Any other questions for Dr. Casteel? Thank you so much for agreeing to do this for us, Dr. Casteel. Thank you all for tuning in, and join us in early March when we speak with the officers of the Graduate History Association about the upcoming Milton Pleasure Conference. Thank you.